The night was quiet. The world outside seemed to be holding its breath, the city lights twinkling in the distance, and the airport runways lying still and silent. It was the kind of night when secrets are revealed and decisions are made that can change the course of history. Alex Cruz, the CEO of British Airways, sat alone in his office, high above the sleeping city. The hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic were the only reminders that life continued outside these walls. But for Cruz, time seemed to stand still as he stared at the documents in front of him. His attention was fixed on a thick file stamped with bold red letters, Project Nightingale. The name itself hinted at secrecy and urgency, a project that had been quietly discussed in hushed tones among the airline's top engineers and executives. Inside, the file contained a detailed report from British Airways' most trusted engineers. It focused on the airline's pride and joy, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner fleet. These aircraft were the backbone of BA's long-haul operations, celebrated for their efficiency, comfort, and cutting-edge technology. Cruz had expected a routine analysis, perhaps a minor maintenance issue or a recommendation for a software update. After all, the Dreamliner had always been a symbol of progress and innovation for the airline. But as he read deeper, his heart began to race. Instead of reassurance, he found a ticking time bomb hidden within the technical jargon. The words on the page seemed to blur as the gravity of the situation became clear. The report revealed a structural issue with the aircraft's advanced carbon fiber composite material, a material that was supposed to be stronger and lighter than anything that had come before. But under certain flight conditions, it was developing microscopic fractures. These fractures were so small they could only be seen under powerful microscopes, forming silently and invisibly as the plane soared through the skies. They were undetectable by standard inspection methods, making them all the more dangerous. The engineers had tried every tool at their disposal, scanning and testing, but the fractures remained hidden from routine checks. The implications were chilling. A catastrophic failure could occur without warning. Cruz's thoughts turned immediately to the thousands of passengers who boarded British Airways flights every day. Families, business travelers, children on their first flights, all trusting the airline with their lives, never suspecting the risk that now lurked beneath the surface. The Dreamliner was more than just an aircraft. It was the pride of the fleet, a symbol of British Airways' commitment to excellence and safety. It had carried millions of people across continents, connecting loved ones and opening up the world. Now, that same beautiful machine was revealed to have a potentially fatal flaw. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Cruz's shoulders. He knew that every decision he made would have consequences for the company, its employees, and most importantly, its passengers. The potential consequences were catastrophic. A single failure could lead to disaster, not just for British Airways, but for the entire aviation industry. The stakes could not have been higher. Cruz paced his office, the city lights reflecting off the glass as he weighed his options. The decision forming in his mind was radical, unprecedented in the history of the airline. It would mean grounding the entire Dreamliner fleet, disrupting schedules, and facing public scrutiny. The cost would be astronomical. Billions in lost revenue, compensation for passengers, and the logistical nightmare of rerouting flights and finding replacement aircraft. The airline's reputation, painstakingly built over decades, would be put to the ultimate test. But as Cruz looked at the empty seats in his mind's eye, he knew the alternative was unthinkable. No amount of money or inconvenience could justify risking even a single life. With resolve hardening in his chest, Cruz reached for his phone. It was time to call an emergency board meeting, to share the burden of this decision with those who needed to know, and to act before it was too late. The era of the Dreamliner at British Airways was about to end, not with fanfare, but with a quiet, decisive act of leadership. The planes would be grounded, inspected, and if necessary, retired from service. For Cruz, the choice was clear. The safety of his passengers and crew had to come first, no matter the cost. In that midnight hour, he made the decision that would define his legacy. Safety over everything, always. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was revolutionary for its carbon fiber fuselage. This material made the plane lighter and more efficient. However, it was also the source of a terrifying secret. Engineers found that specific flight conditions caused composite fatigue delamination. The layers of carbon fiber were separating, growing with every flight. Standard inspections couldn't detect this subsurface peeling. The issue was inherent to the design, not a manufacturing defect. The uncertainty of when a failure might occur made the situation dangerous. The dream of the Dreamliner had turned into a potential nightmare. The discovery of a critical fuselage flaw sent shockwaves throughout the entire British Airways organization, but nowhere were the effects felt more acutely than in the safety department. Overnight, the atmosphere shifted from routine diligence to a state of heightened alert. The team, usually calm and methodical, now faced a challenge that threatened the very foundation of their work. Every procedure, every checklist, and every protocol was scrutinized with new urgency. The safety officers pored over technical documents and digital charts, searching for any sign that the flaw could have been detected earlier, or that it might be present in other aircraft. Suddenly, every flight became a calculated risk. The pilots, who had always trusted the integrity of their aircraft, now prepared for takeoff with a new sense of gravity. Their training had prepared them for emergencies, but not for the uncertainty of flying with a hidden structural weakness. Each time they took the controls, they were acutely aware that the aircraft beneath them was not as strong as it should be. The flaw was invisible, but its presence was felt in every decision, every maneuver, and every moment in the air. Senior management agonized over every departure. The weight of responsibility was immense, knowing that the safety of passengers and crew was at stake with every flight. Meetings stretched late into the night as executives debated the best course of action. Operational restrictions were considered, such as limiting flight hours or reducing loads, but these measures proved impractical for a global airline. The logistics were overwhelming, and the financial impact would be devastating. Maintenance crews inspected the aircraft's structure, but the flaw was subtle, difficult to detect, and impossible to fix quickly. The realization set in: the aircraft's structure was fundamentally compromised. The issue created a crisis of confidence among employees. Pilots, flight attendants, and ground staff all questioned whether it was safe to continue operations. The usual camaraderie was replaced by anxious conversations and worried glances. Grounding the planes would cause chaos, disrupting schedules, stranding passengers, and costing millions. Yet the alternative was unthinkable. Continuing to fly was, in essence, gambling with lives. Passengers, sensing the tension, boarded with anxious expressions. Flight attendants tried to maintain calm, but the strain was visible. The entire operation felt like it was teetering on the edge. The safety department, after exhaustive analysis, concluded that there was no acceptable level of risk. The flaw was not a hypothetical threat, it was a certainty of degradation, with an unknown timeline for failure. Engineers examined structural diagrams and worn parts, but the answers were elusive. The risk was real, and the timeline for potential disaster was impossible to predict. The CEO, faced with mounting evidence and growing pressure, realized there was no real choice left. The safety of passengers and crew had to come first, no matter the cost. In the end, the safety case for the 787 had collapsed. The ripple effect of the flaw had reached every corner of the airline, forcing a decision that would change the course of aviation history. Passengers boarding a British Airways 787 were unaware of the danger. The composite fuselage was the source of peril. The danger was invisible and silent. A structural failure would be sudden and catastrophic. There would be no warning signs. The CEO envisioned the faces of passengers who trusted BA. Continuing to fly felt like a profound deception. The ethical burden was immense. The only responsible action was to remove the danger entirely. The emergency board meeting was tense, the air thick with anxiety and uncertainty. Every executive in the room understood the gravity of the situation. The fate of the airline, and perhaps even its reputation, hung in the balance. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure was palpable as the board members gathered around the long table, each one bracing for the difficult conversation ahead. Cruz, the CEO, stood at the head of the table and presented the findings with grim clarity. His voice was steady, but the weight of his words was unmistakable. He laid out the facts, the risks, and the potential consequences, leaving no room for doubt about the seriousness of the situation. After a moment's pause, Cruz made his recommendation: sell every Dreamliner in the fleet. The words seemed to echo in the silent room, their meaning sinking in slowly. The reaction was immediate, stunned silence, followed by murmurs of disbelief. Some executives exchanged worried glances, while others simply stared at Cruise, trying to process the enormity of his proposal. The CFO quickly pointed out the financial implications. Selling the Dreamliners would mean a massive loss, not just in terms of money, but also in market share and future growth. The numbers were daunting, and the risks to the company's bottom line were clear. The COO raised the logistical nightmare that would follow. Replacing such a significant part of the fleet would disrupt schedules, impact customers, and require a complete overhaul of operations. The challenges seemed almost insurmountable. Despite the mounting opposition and the barrage of questions, Cruise held his ground. He listened to every concern, but his resolve never wavered. He emphasized again and again that safety had to come before profits. No amount of financial gain could justify putting passengers or crew at risk. For Cruise, the choice was clear, even if it was painful. Any attempt to manage the risk, Cruise argued, would be nothing more than a gamble, a roll of the dice with lives at stake. The uncertainty was simply too great. The consequences of being wrong were unthinkable. A single mistake could lead to disaster, and the cost would be measured not just in dollars, but in lives and trust. The meeting dragged on late into the night, each argument weighed and every scenario considered. It was long, grueling, and emotionally draining for everyone involved. But slowly, as the hours passed, Cruise's unwavering focus on safety began to sway the room. One by one, the executives started to see the bigger picture. The decision, though painful, became clear. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The board agreed. Safety was non-negotiable. The relief was palpable, but so was the sense of loss. It was a difficult decision, but the right one. The public announcement came on a grey Monday. BA decided to phase out its 787 fleet. The official reason was fleet simplification. The aviation world was stunned. Speculation ran rampant. Boeing expressed disappointment but reaffirmed confidence in the 787. The announcement cast doubt over Boeing's flagship product. The news sent ripples through the stock market. Other airlines backed the aircraft but faced questions. BA's decision was a massive red flag for the industry. Among BA staff, the announcement was met with confusion and pride. The 787 was popular among crews. Many worried about job security. Maintenance crews connected the dots. Pilots were unsettled by the loss of trust. A sense of relief spread among them. The decision was seen as a testament to safety. Staff felt pride in the airline's ethical leadership. They worked for a company prioritizing safety. The operational challenges were immense, but the staff felt united. Experts were divided over BA's decision. Critics labeled it reckless and premature. They argued BA panicked without public evidence. Supporters praised the decision as bold and courageous. They saw it as a robust safety culture in action. The precautionary principle was emphasized. BA acted on credible risk warnings. An air crash investigator praised the proactive move. BA put passenger lives ahead of profits. It was not reckless, it was responsible. The years after the 787 sell-off were challenging but transformative. The initial chaos was predicted. BA became known for uncompromising safety. This reputation resonated with the public. Passenger loyalty grew. The financial losses were recouped through brand loyalty. Internally, the decision revitalized company culture. Staff morale soared. The airline's safety culture became legendary. BA emerged stronger, with unwavering passenger trust.